This is going to be a bit of an unscripted ramble because I've just had a lot of thoughts knocking around in my head about this topic. I recently did a video with my year-end income wrap-up for the year 2025, and I did so much better than I was expecting to do, but, you know, a part of me still remembers like my heady indie romance publishing days where I was making a lot more money, like 2 or 3 times what I'm making now. And it actually felt like a lot more because basically the first third is what I need to live on. And then all the other money I was making was like the extra. So like, you know, I'm still making a living, but I've lost all of my extra. And there's a little part of me that's bummed about that, of course. On the other hand, there's almost another part of me that's kind of happy about it because I feel like in these last few years, I really kind of reset my priorities and focused in more on like what's really important to me. And it's really easy. Like in the years where I was making a lot of money, especially by my standards, it was so easy to lose track very quickly of what was really important to me in life. And I reeled it back in pretty quickly, but that was like an alarming lesson to me to realize like if you start making a lot of money, how quickly you can just kind of change just based merely on how much money you're making, like a lot of your habits, your priorities. As soon as I started making money, and you know, it starts small. It really started just with me buying a couple things that I've been wanting for a really long time that I had never been able to afford in the past. But within a year or two, it had turned into like just collecting for the sake of collecting and spending a lot of money on stuff that was just sitting there. Not just the actual collecting, but the way I was looking at my business was starting to become a constant, like, endless growth. I was buying into the, like, how can I keep growing this business as big as possible? Including to the point where I was afraid to make risky or creative decisions sometimes because I knew that that wasn't going to lead to growth. And a part of me thought, if I'm not growing, if I'm not always making more money and doing better than the previous year, then I'm starting to fail. So I went through a few years of that and all that mindset just kind of creeping in on me, like really sneaky. And then almost as soon as it had kind of gotten its claws in me, I started to question it. One of the things that really first got me thinking, I've made a wrong turn here, was when I very first started this YouTube channel. I thought I'm just going to make like a manga collecting channel because I want to talk to people about my manga collection, the manga I'm reading. I can show off my hauls and my collection and learn about what stuff I might have missed. Like that'll be fun. And I made several videos. They're still up if you want to see my oldest videos. I made just a few videos with my collection and my hauls and some manga talk. I watched them back and then I thought, what the am I doing here? Why am I buying all this stuff? Like, I'm not going to be able to read all this. What am I doing? So I only made like 4 videos and then I stopped. Not only did I stop making the videos, but I really reeled back on collecting manga after that. And at the same time, I was starting to just feel really burned out. At that point, I'd pretty much been writing to market, like aggressively to market. And often reading to market as well, because it's hard to write to market if you don't also read to market. Like my life had become consumed by the romance market for like 4 years. I was getting really burned out. It isn't really what I loved. It was very fun in the beginning when it felt like fresh, like I was kind of discovering something new and playing with new ideas. But after 4 years, it didn't feel like that anymore. And the fun was starting to drain out of me. My sales were getting worse accordingly because it's really hard to write to market if you're not having fun. It might not be the number one thing that you would do in your dreams, but if you're not having fun, it can get very hard to keep up with it and to keep pleasing the reader. So, you know, this kind of brought me back to my original youthful goals. I reconnected with my inner poor 18, 24-year-old, whatever, young adult self. When I was young, the only goal that I really had in life was to be able to have as much time to write my Hidden Lands novels as possible. yes, I know most people have other goals. They have goals to do something with their lives or acquire something or whatever. Like, I had this singular goal that I just wanted to be able to write my fantasy novels, and I wanted time to be able to like lose myself in my fantasy world the way that I did when I was a kid and a teen, because it was just my happy place. And I'm a Capricorn. I can appreciate the need to work and be a productive member of society and to be practical and save money and all of that. But at the same time, I kind of had this thought, like, I only ask one thing of life. Like, that's all I want, just space for that. So that was always my goal, to get there. And a lot of my life decisions were made with this goal in mind. So I didn't go to college because I didn't want student loans. And I also thought, if I'm going to college, I'm also going to have to work at the same time. And I'm not going to have any time to write for 4 years and I'm going to go insane. So I didn't do that. Instead, I would go to work, and then whenever I had free time, I would write, and I was trying to get a book deal. When I was 26, that did happen. I got my first book deal. And from then on, I pretty much made my living as a published novelist. And pretty much as soon as I got that book deal, I had some other friends that were getting very large book deals. In some cases, enough that like I could have bought a house with cash, never had a mortgage ever again, probably put some money in savings as well, and like, you know, not been retired, but, you know, had a real financial stability behind me where I would always have time to write, even if the books didn't sell, because I could probably get by with just like a part-time job or something like that. I did not, however, get one of those book deals, but it was my constant dream to try to write that one series that would just get me a big payout so I could just buy a house, own it outright, no mortgage. I was always thinking, like, how can I keep our expenses as low as possible? What's the car that is the cheapest to drive? Do a lot of cooking at home, a lot of bargain shopping. Like, my whole mindset has been based around how can I have as much time freedom as possible. So that's the point of this video, is that I started out with this goal of I want money so that I can have time freedom. But when I actually started to make money, that goal quickly started to shift into I just want more money because I just want more money. For some years, just money itself became my goal. And then I remembered like who I was and what I actually cared about, and reoriented myself back to the original goal, which was not money, it was time freedom. And you might say, well, isn't the whole point of making money, at least for some of us, to have time freedom? But I think that it is important how you phrase this to yourself. So some years ago, I came across the FIRE movement, which most of you have probably heard of at this point, but it stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. The idea being that you make more money than you need in enough of an excess and for enough of a length of time that you can live off your investment returns and you don't have to work anymore. You can retire early. This is usually accomplished by either working really hard at a high-paying job and just saving really aggressively, or by working at kind of a normal job, but just living really, really frugally. When I first heard about the FIRE movement, it was extremely attractive to me because it sounded kind of like what I'd been trying to do. Getting to a point where I had financial independence so that I could just write my fantasy books and like live my chill little life. I didn't really want to retire per se because I love writing. And I like this channel even. And, you know, I liked when I worked at the bookstore. Like, I like to work, but I like to work in moderation, and I like to work on things that I enjoy, as many of us do. So I never intended to like truly like not work, but I did want to get to a point where I could always choose what work I was doing and how much work I was doing. Frequent criticisms leveled against the FIRE movement are that if you get wrapped up into it, you start to become so focused on saving money that you're afraid to let go. You're afraid to actually retire and stop saving money because you can always set a new goalpost for yourself. You can always go, okay, well, I need this much to live on. But then you think like, oh, well, like, what if I have a severe medical emergency? Okay, so maybe I should save a little more. What if me and my partner both have a severe medical emergency and like we need like cancer treatments for like 5 years? Like what if that happens to both of us? Okay, maybe we need more. And like, okay, what if we get past that? But what if we're like in our 80s and we need like round the clock care and we want to have like good care? Okay, so maybe we need like, actually, we thought we need like 2 million. Turns out we need like 15 million. Like people get afraid to let go of earning because you can always think of a new thing to be afraid of. It never stops. And you can also go from being like frugal in a practical way where you're not like afraid to have fun to being just like a complete cheapskate who, one of those people who's on extreme cheapskates kind of cheapskate. I don't know how long it's been since extreme cheapskate was on the air, but you're one of those people that, feeds your husband cat food because it was cheaper than a can of tuna, or, you don't use toilet paper. You rewash flannel strips even for number 2, like you can get into a level of crazy where you're starting to alienate your friends because you won't even go out for a coffee when a friend invites you. You're just like, no, I can make coffee at home. Those are some of the common problems with FIRE, which I don't think I'm at great risk of falling into. I am very naturally frugal, but the things that I do enjoy, I am really, really like pry them out of my cold, dead hands. I want to have those things. They're small, but I've really like done an assessment of what I really care about. And I realize that for the most part, I don't care about a whole lot except just being home, writing my books, going to the library and getting a nice stack of books to read and then returning them. That's fine. Doing a jigsaw puzzle from the thrift store, if I just have time to do those things, I am a very happy girl. Once in a while, do some cheap travel. I'm fine with crashing on my friend Chris's couch in Brooklyn for a weekend and just, having a little good food, going on a little adventure somewhere and hanging out at her apartment, that kind of vacation. That's like real chill. But, when I'm on that vacation, I still want to be able to like have a treat. If I happen to catch my favorite bakery when they're open, I want to have a nice, like, expensive, good quality pastry. I want to have my daily cup of hot cocoa and kombucha. If I like something, I don't deny myself some small pleasures because I feel like I'm so frugal in many other ways. And I've thought about it. Like, what do I actually really love? I'm allowed to have those things. I think we all should be, even if you have a little more expensive things that you love. I think we should all be able to have some things that we love. So I don't think that I'm overly cheap, but I do sometimes fall into the trap of wanting to accumulate more and more money because I'm scared that I don't have enough. And that was part of what was happening when my career was really booming. Along with that, I just started to spend, stupid money on stuff. And eventually I also started watching some like financial channels on YouTube here and there after kind of going through a lot of like FIRE movement stuff on Reddit and reading some of the books that they recommended. I started watching some different financial channels. And a lot of them have some good advice, but they're often kind of based around the idea that you will be trying to always make more money. That is always what you should be aiming for. And I think for what a lot of people care about, that probably is true, fine for a lot of people. If the things that you care about are a little more expensive and you're not content just sitting at home writing books every day, then that's fair enough. But I really don't want anything more expensive right now. Really, all that I want is just to feel increasingly more secure. So I've been thinking a lot about how I want to reframe this for myself and getting back to the idea of like my focus is on time freedom. When I make money, the point is not the money itself. It is the freedom that it gives me. But at the same time, I don't want to become overly focused on the making of money so that I can have time freedom eventually. I don't want to lose the present time freedom, which is a trap that I think I fall into a lot. What I mean by this is like, I don't allow myself to rest in the present moment. I still feel like this is the time when I'm supposed to be making money so that I can have time freedom. Therefore, I will not allow myself time freedom now. And that's what I have been trying to focus on lately, is thinking it's okay to just say today is enough. Even if I didn't work like a full-time day. Maybe I only worked 4 hours and I got my to-do list done and it is enough. And for the rest of the day, I can focus on making a nice home-cooked meal, reading some books, playing a little cozy video game, getting some exercise, spending time with Dade and the kitties. There is no reason that I can't just do that, but it's really difficult. In the society that we live in, not only is there a level of not working equals lazy, loser, ungrateful, nobody wants to work anymore. There's that. There's also the messages that you will get, even from a lot of financial channels, that will tell you, like, you should live your life, you should enjoy yourself. Like, okay, I've talked before that how I do enjoy Ramit Sethi's I Will Teach You to Be Rich channel. He talks to couples and he really digs into like the psychology of their money and what problems that they're having and why, and like how that connects to issues that they might have had since they were children. And he's very compassionate and insightful a lot of times. I really like his channel, but one thing that does not really resonate with me with him is that he always is like, the whole topic of the channel is I will teach you to be rich. And then he'll kind of always encourage people to like live a little, spend your money, have some luxuries. And again, that's fine. That's totally fine. I think everyone should be allowed to have luxuries. But the one luxury that's never mentioned is simply having time. Just lazing about, reading, or doing jigsaw puzzles or playing video games. The things that I like to do, they're not about having stuff. They're about having time to just do those kind of activities that feed my brain, fill the well, calm my brain, all of that kind of thing. There's kind of an unspoken thing, certainly at least in America, that you should always be making more money, and once you do, you can spend it on more expensive stuff. It is rarely mentioned that, hey, you know what you could do? You could make enough money, and as soon as you have, you could just stop doing anything. You could stop buying things, you could just step off the treadmill for a while and just enjoy yourself. And there's such a weird, like an almost crazy mix of feelings, and I think social media has probably made it even worse. Just on a normal day, like just yesterday as I'm filming this, I had a headache yesterday. I was going to film the videos I'm filming today. I was going to film 3 videos after I woke up and kind of, got myself together. But I had like this low-key headache. I just felt blah. What I really wanted to do was just spend the whole day reading, which I hadn't really done in a couple of weeks or like a month. But I resisted it so hard. I was just like, no. You had this task, you need to do it. Like, you should always have a task. You should always accomplish at least one substantial task every day. Otherwise, like, what are you doing? And I just didn't want to give myself any kind of grace for having an off day. And particularly, I'd been thinking about how much I'd been working that whole previous week and thinking like, I haven't really been working like full-time hours this week. I'm behind. I could be working more. Other people work harder than me. Therefore, I should be working as hard as everyone else. It's like a certain kind of guilt. Like it's kind of like you step off the treadmill for even a week and you have guilt because you can see your friends still on the treadmill. So then you feel like you have to get back on the treadmill just because your friends are still there and they're sweating and suffering, and they see you pouring yourself a cup of tea and cracking open your book, and you feel kind of like, I'm sorry guys. All right. You're right. I'll get back on the treadmill. That's like perhaps one of the prevailing feelings I have. It's not like there's no one in my room like watching me wondering why I'm being so relaxed. It's this weird mental thing, like this weird mental guilt. Like, did I actually like get a break from capitalism and like other people didn't? Now I feel bad. Like what a privileged asshole. So then I feel like I have to stop, get back on the treadmill, keep working. And if I do have any extra money, rather than taking a break, go be like everybody else. Go buy yourself something nice. Don't spend it on just not working. What are you thinking? That's like a mindset that has ingrained itself deep in my subconscious. And I've really been aggressively trying to unpack it in the last few years, because I'm aware of it now. I'm at least, I see you, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels this way, but I'm starting to realize, like, just letting myself, like, rather than feeling the guilt and getting back on the treadmill and then spending any extra money I have on a nice thing instead of time, who does this really benefit? We all know who this benefits. This benefits, like, the richest part of society. It does not actually benefit my friends that are still on the treadmill. It benefits, the CEO of eBay who got some money from me because I bought something on eBay that I don't really need. Benefits the CEO of Visa that I use my credit card to buy the thing with. And some of that money maybe goes to a small seller on eBay, but it doesn't benefit, my mind, my mental health, because I didn't take the break that I needed. And I also have to accept to a certain extent that there are people on the treadmill because they truly cannot get off, and there are people on the treadmill because they chose that for themselves. I don't have to choose that for myself. I can get off. Not all the time, but I can take breaks from the treadmill. And the reason that I can is because since the day I turned 18, my goal has been to get off the treadmill as much as possible. So, like, I owe it to my teenage self, who has been working hard, or sometimes not working hard, but, has been sacrificing things and making her decisions based on allowing my older self to have more freedom. I must allow myself as much time off the treadmill as I can, because that was the whole point, right? To get back to a time when I have more time to read and think and draw. I miss drawing, guys. And I briefly want to talk about that mindset of, like, nobody wants to work anymore, because that's another thing that can get in your head when you're not working. So I'm trying to think about it. Like, it's certainly not that I'm not contributing to society, but also that society does not need us to the point that it used to. Like, you can just look at the trajectory of history and technology, and, like, what did people have back in the day? What do you need? You need food, clothing, shelter, water, hopefully medical care, hopefully a little bit of art, transportation. Like, there's your basic needs in modern society. And most people choose to have more than your basic needs. And if you choose to have more than your basic needs, then it makes sense that you might need to work a little more to sustain that. Although, of course, there are certain people in society that are currently hoarding a ridiculous amount of resources and money. But even setting that aside, we're able to provide clothing with extreme efficiency compared to back in the day. Same with food. Farming has gotten colossally efficient compared to back in the day. Once in a while my house needs maintenance, but for the most part, got the shelter. We don't have to take a jug to the river to get our water. Like, we've made life easier. So we should all not have to work as much. We just shouldn't, unless we want to have an excess of luxuries. Then we might have to work a little more to support that. Like, in a fair society, there would be a certain level of that. If working all the time doesn't even get you the basics, then to me, the most logical thing is to look for off-ramps from the whole thing, which is kind of what I've been doing my whole life, is just kind of looking for ways to not participate in the whole thing, the whole hamster wheel to begin with. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about as I reframe my whole life, my mindset, my business model these days, that I'm no longer thinking about endless growth. I'm just throwing it out the window. If I grow beyond what I need, awesome. But if I don't, that's fine. I'm currently focused on figuring out exactly how much I need to work to get there, and then working that much and then not working any more than that. And I know that's not going to happen all the time. I'm going to have days where like I freak out and I overwork myself because I'm like panicked about money or just, feeling ambitious that day or something. But in general, I'm trying to reframe my mindset to be more based around enough rather than endless growth, and in contentment rather than always having more or having fancier things or keeping up with anybody else and what they want and what they think is important. And I also I don't want to take more than I need in life. It's kind of a moral philosophy at this point. I had an era where I did kind of take more than I needed, and I realized it didn't feel good to me. I didn't like that. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to take more than I need. I would like to live in a culture that is more about spending my time wisely but freely on things that bring me true enrichment, true joy, which is usually like more knowledge, more creative spark, more time with friends, more generosity with friends. In my older years, what I would really love to do is just be able to like invite people over for a beautiful dinner I made for them, and like I've got a jigsaw puzzle on the table. Like come chill. I would love to be able to do that. And then once in a while, do something a little more splurgy, but I don't want that to be like the end goal of life. I want the things that matter the most to me, that make up the fabric of my daily life, to just be like the most beautiful, simple life where things feel slow and content, and I'm just able to go to the library and browse for hours, bring home a big old stack of books, read the books, make myself a cup of tea, sniff it and stir it, and keep reading, and then work on my puzzle, get out my sketchbook, just do those things that really are often what makes for the fabric of a contented life. I've also had times in life where I took a lot of trips because I was working at a crappy job or I was stressed a lot, and the trip was always like the reward. The thing, like if you can make it through the next, few months, now you get to go on this trip. And I think part of the reason I don't really care about traveling as much anymore is because I have gotten a little closer to just my daily life feeling like it has enough contentment in it that I don't have as much sense of needing to escape. So those are just some of my thoughts about how I'm reviewing my approach to my career, my money, and like my life priorities. So I hope this resonates with some of you guys, and I'd love to know your thoughts on your relationship to time versus money, or anything else you feel like talking about. As always, I really appreciate you being here. My name is Lydia Foxglove, and I'm a fantasy author, and on this channel I talk about the creative life in general, the emotional, psychological, practical, financial parts of it, and writing in particular. So if that sounds good to you and you're new here, I hope you'll stick around. I also have a member tier on Patreon, Substack, and YouTube. You get options, but they all get the same benefit. 2 bonus videos per month voted on by you guys, and access to my Discord server where we have a community of writers and artists supporting each other. If you'd like to read any of my books, there's a link in the description. The Hidden Lands books are the ones I always recommend first because they are my fantasy novels and the books that really have my heart. But my free book of the month this month is Captain Hook and the Mermaid, a steamy fairy retelling that draws heavily from the original source material of Peter Pan, along with being spicy, but also a little bittersweet. I post every Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern and sometimes on Wednesdays, and I thank you so much for all of your support. I'll see you next time. Bye! Oh, where are you going? Where's this going? It's okay.